This is an educational session about using PowerPoint slides in a Zoom presentation. Kristen is no stranger to the conference stage, having presented to audience of hundreds at many professional conferences. At these events, everyone expects a PowerPoint presentation. We've all experienced death by PowerPoint. So Kristen will share what she has learned, often the hard way, through research and experience. She will show us how to effectively use PowerPoint slides in an online Zoom meeting. She will also show us how to craft interesting PowerPoint slides. The presentation will be 10 to 12 minutes. Please welcome Toastmaster Kristen Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster and my fellow Toastmasters. As we get more and more proficient with all the bells and whistles of Zoom, I have found that incorporating some form of data or slides, this is a perfect opportunity to try our wings at it because there's no projector to set up and it's relatively easy to get into the PowerPoint. Tonight's presentation is going to cover two things. It's actually I'm going to talk a little bit about the technical side of setting up your PowerPoint for Zoom, what settings to put it on, how to get into it, etc. I'm also going to I'm actually going to use as a demonstration a little presentation that I had made for a much larger audience. And so you will also see the way the slides are done up, and I'll talk about each slide as I go through. So there's content, there's technical, and I'd like you also to be looking very closely at how the slides are made up so that you can incorporate these thoughts and ideas into your own PowerPoint presentations. I will qualify this by saying that this presentation was crafted for a large audience. We can get away with a little bit more when we're on Zoom because I think that we can put a little bit more in our slides. You'll see that these slides are very minimalist, and I will explain why as I go along. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and the first thing that we need to do once we've made up our PowerPoint, crafted our PowerPoint slides and our presentation, is save it on our computer. And when we get into our Zoom meeting, the first thing to do is have your PowerPoint software opened, have your slide presentation opened, and have it minimized on your computer so that when you do share your screen, it's relatively easy to get into the presentation. So that's what I've done on my computer. Now, can all of you see my computer laptop? Okay.
Yes.
And you'll see that I've got my PowerPoint presentation minimized down at the bottom. And now you will see that I am in the part of PowerPoint where I am crafting the actual presentation. So this is not a full screen presentation. This is where we actually create our slides. So when we do this, whether you're using Apple or PC, these tabs are the same in each version of PowerPoint. So you want to go to the slideshow tab and set up slideshow, because there are a couple of settings within here that are really important, particularly when you're in Zoom. If I was going to create this slideshow for a large audience and have it up on a big screen, I would have presented by a speaker showing. However, because it's a PowerPoint within Zoom, it's imperative that you click browsed by an individual bracket window. That's the setting that you want. You also want this setting to be set on advancing the slides manually. And I like to use a show without narration so that you don't get these little voices telling you which slide is up on the screen. And also to use a laser pointer, you'll see that within PowerPoint, a really nifty little trick is to use the control key and press the left mouse button and you'll get a pointer. So those are the settings. And as soon as you're ready to start your presentation within Zoom, you use this same slideshow tab, but you go from beginning. And now you'll see that we're in the full screen presentation. You'll also see that now I have a little laser pointer that I can use, and a click of the mouse and I'm ready to go into slides, into the presentation. Now this particular presentation is around how to use the 30 seconds or the 1 minute prior to a speech to write a really great introduction. And one of the reasons that we want to use that minute as effectively as we can is that we want our audience to be really present. And so the introduction grabs them. And we want them to be able to hear our message, to know what to listen for. So this is the slide that I would use to talk about that whole piece of why an introduction to a speech is important. And you'll see there are very few notes. I often will use 8, 7 words on a slide. And what I try to do on a slide is capture emotion. And I think that this is so important in any presentation, but particularly in a Zoom presentation, because we're two-dimensional here, and by using slides that capture emotion, we can try to add that third dimension. So what I wanted, again, I use high-resolution graphics that I purchase. I don't use cheap ones that I get over the internet, so these are good on Zoom. They're also good in a big screen in a big auditorium. I wanted to capture an audience of people who were engrossed in what the speaker said, listening intently and interested in what the speaker said. So I spend a lot of time looking through a lot of photographs looking for just the right one. So this one captured what I was trying to convey. I was speaking to Toastmasters, so there's a broad range of generations in here. And so again, the slide itself, the visual, takes up at least 2/3 of the screen, and that's important to note as well. Now in this presentation, there are 3 pieces to the puzzle in a good introduction. There's the prize, where we let our audience know what it is they're going to get out of the presentation, what they're going to take home, what's in it for them. And so I wanted a visual that would convey that emotion. We all love getting presents, and in this case there's sparkles and glitter coming out of the gift. So the visual, for those who are visual learners, they'll really get that this is a prize. And a same color scheme, very few words, etc. And I feel that that's really important even in a Zoom presentation. The second piece of the puzzle in a good introduction is the path. And that is where you tell your audience kind of what you're going to say to them so that they know what to listen for. So it's the ABCs of, or the reason why, or how I came to understand this, or I'm going to give you 3 pieces. There's 3 pieces to a great speech introduction. And so your audience, that's where they are listening for those 3 pieces or those sections, and that's what gives a good speech bones. But in the introduction, you have an opportunity to engage them and give them a hint at what to listen for. And so, if you've got a 5 to 7 minute speech, this is a free 30 seconds. So use your free 30 seconds or a minute well. Now, as far as the graphic goes, again, I wanted something that showed a path, that we were creating a path. So there were lots of graphics that I could have used: trails, roads, intersections, forest trails, that kind of thing. But when I saw this one, I really liked it because it was about how we are creating the path. We are laying the path down for our audience. And so this, I think, was a really clear and powerful visual that helped to catch an emotion. And the third piece of a good introduction is the path, and that's your credential. That's why we should listen to you. And so that has to do with your authority on what you're speaking about, whether it's something that is part of your history or something that you're knowledgeable about, something that you're profoundly interested in or that you feel passionate about. And I call this your chip. So your pass is your chip: credential, history, interest, and passion. And you'll see that again, the visual takes up most of the screen. I'm using exactly the same font. I'm using exactly the same size of text. And I'm ensuring that the graphic takes up most of the screen and using very few words. Then a good screen to help people to visualize what you've just said, to just summarize what you've said. Now you'll notice that in every one of these slides, I have not created my slides to use my PowerPoint presentation as my notes. I've done exactly the opposite. So I don't use the presentation as my notes. I use the presentation slides to back up what it is I'm saying. Does the slide trigger what I need to talk about? Yes, it does. It's like one single bullet point to help me understand what I'm talking about. The key here is to know your content so well that the slides themselves are just triggering some content rather than being your notes. So don't fall into that trap, because your audience knows it if you are just reading slides and you've lost them. So never ever create a PowerPoint presentation to use as notes. And here's the other thing. If you create the PowerPoint presentation and you plan to use the slides as your notes, what happens if the power goes out? What happens if you are not able to get your projector working, or for some reason your laptop isn't working? You have got to be able to give your presentation without the slides. So that's why it's so important to have the slides back you up, not the other way around. And that's the most important thing. If there's only one thing you take out of this presentation, that's it. Few graphics, or big graphics, big high quality graphics. I purchase all my graphics so that I can use them again and again. And then a good finishing slide. One of the things that we need to recognize is that we tend to connect with faces. And so when you can use a slide that has a face in it of some kind, that's really powerful. And I like to have something up on the screen that is just a message too. So, or just a question to be food for thought. So very quickly, I'm going to share with you a few of my favorite slides that I used often when I was doing presentations for dentists who were maybe students or just starting out their businesses. And this is one of my favorites here, this one with the fish, and this is how I used it. So I'm talking about people who are in an entrepreneurial world that really were never trained to be entrepreneurs. And I get a really great reaction from this slide because people can relate. So even though it's a fish face, it's still a face. And so again, you can see how I've filled up the entire screen with the graphic and created just enough room so that I can put some text. And if you don't have enough room, this is another one of my favorite graphics. And you'll note that the actual graphic ends here. So what I did was pulled it up as big as I could. I put a black square on the back of the screen. I overlaid the photograph and I fuzzied up the edges so that I had blank room for text. And I often had this one up as the room was filling, so that this is all people saw up on the screen before I even spoke. So you can see how I'm using the PowerPoint slides to back up what I'm saying, to convey a message, and to drill right into an emotion of some kind. So you've got to really give yourself some thought about what's the emotion that you want to have bubble up in your audience, and what slide, what graphic would convey that emotion. And that's how to do a PowerPoint slide. So I hope that you've had a little bit of background now in some of the technical parts of it, as well as some of the ways that you can really use PowerPoint as an effective tool. I highly recommend that you read a book called Presentation Zen or Slideology. And both of those books are just really fabulous books on helping you to understand how to break your screen down into quadrants, and what should be in which quadrant, which way your graphics should be facing, how many squares of the how many cells of the quadrant your graphic should use up, etc. Now, I hope that I've got about a minute left, couple of minutes left, and I would love to take some questions.
I have one. Kristen, when you
Okay.
gave this when you gave this presentation on the weekend, you were talking about the graphics, and you mentioned some sites that you could download these 50 for 50 or something. I can't remember what it was. Do you remember?
Yes. Yes, it's one that I like to use. It's called Big Stock Photo. And you buy a little package of credits, 50 credits for $50. And if you download your graphics in a small or medium size, you can usually get them for 1 or 2 credits. And then you can use them on any promotional material, any slides, any commercial product that you want. You have the rights to use that photograph, and nobody can dispute it. And they're really good photographs, and they're higher resolution.
It's 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I got another one. For depending on the room that you're in and the screen that you're using and the visual, the video, you need to make some kind of adjustment for that. Obviously, you don't want anything small, or is it always going to be about the same?
In a live presentation?
Yes. Yeah.
No, it'll all be about the same, generally the same. Plan for larger.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kristen?
Yes.
I just want to say the power in those graphics is amazing. It just goes right to the heart of the message. And the idea too that not to be tethered to the presentation, so that if it goes down, you go down. It's just amazing that you thought that out like that, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bob. I have to tell you that I learned it the hard way. I learned from watching the greats, and I learned by doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
Very
folks, I
good.
think it's just 8 o'clock. We're going to start to run just a little late here, so I'd like to call this talk to a halt. And Kristen,
Okay.
that was a great talk. I really got a lot out of it, so thank you.
Okay, so I will stop the share now. And we're back.
Okay.